Hey, it's Matt, your average gamer, and for this one, we're going to be doing 5 of the most fun builds that I've done lately. These 5 builds were an absolute blast to do. They were really enjoyable, they kept the game interesting, and I figured I'd share these 5 with you guys. Let's get into the details here. First one that I'm going to highlight here was a combination build. We were using Morgoth's Cursed Sword and Bloodhound's Fang. These two power stance well together, and they have 2 of the most fun Ashes of War in the game. The unique Ash of War on both of them is something that you're going to enjoy doing. It's something for both of these that you can take on bosses, do a lot of damage, and have one of the most aesthetically good-looking Ashes of War, unique Ashes of War in Morgoth's Cursed Sword, and then obviously Bloodhound's Fang being a really useful tool and being able to dodge and punish bosses with its Ash of War. Power stancing these together too can give you some posture damage, some good damage in general. They scale kind of similarly since both of them have a little bit better in dex. Obviously you need some arcane for Morgoth's Cursed Sword, but the fact that you have dex as your main stat for both of these essentially, even though Bloodhound's quality leans a little bit more towards dexterity, gives you the versatility to do this build at 150. Let's get into equipment. For equipment, we have Morgoth's Cursed Sword plus 10, preferably Bloodhound's Fang plus 10, also preferably. Any seal will do. We had the Raptor's Black Feathers on. We had the Shard of Alexander, Claw Talisman, Dragoncrest Great Shield Talisman, Lord of Blood's Exaltation for those bleed procs. Then you can use something like the Fire tier and then the Faith tier for buffs as well. Let's get into stats. For stats, the idea here is to get a good amount of dex and then a decent amount of strength and arcane as your secondary stats, and then make sure obviously you have enough vigor and endurance to run this build as well. As long as you have those 3 stats and a decent amount of everything else, you're going to have a good combination build here. And as I mentioned with the title of this video, this was one I found really fun. And next up here is the bow build. If you want to take on a challenge, this is something you need to do. Now for the challenge on Discord upcoming this week, it's going to be beating any boss with a bow. Why is that challenging? Because using a bow in Elden Ring, especially the medium or short bows and not the great bows with rain of arrows, is a little bit challenging on bosses given the fact that they're really underpowered in Elden Ring. Now I'm hoping with DLC we get some better bow options, but if you're looking for a challenge, if you're looking to have fun with the game and give yourself something that's going to give you a little bit of a hard time, pick up a bow, throw barrage on it, use status effects, bleed arrows, bloodbone arrows, and you're going to have a great time with this build. Don't get me wrong, it's going to take you a little bit of time to get used to this. Any bosses that, and this is New Game Plus 7, that you normally can just crush with ease using a bow, it's not going to be that simple for you. Even with barrage and the status effects and whatnot, you're going to have to come to a decision on what you want to use. For instance, I use Rot here to tick down his health, and then use bloodbone arrows to get the bleed procs as well in combination to destroy Godric as fast as I possibly could with just a bow. The other thing is bows are really cool too. For this I ended up using the Bandit class's bow. I believe it was a short bow or whatever. You can use the black bow for some more damage. It has a little bit better in terms of scaling and the fact that you can use barrage on it as a medium-sized bow. It's definitely a solid option. But regardless of what you go with, it may be a little bit underpowered. However, you'll have to learn how to keep your distance, get in as many shots as you can, build up status effects, and try to take down bosses with a weapon that makes it challenging to do so. And if you're somebody who likes challenge runs, it may be time to do that bow challenge run. If you're trying to keep Elden Ring interesting, if you're looking for something to do, I know the game's been out a year and we're waiting for DLC. My guess, by the way, for DLC is it's probably going to be sometime around this fall or November. So we do have a little bit of a wait to do, which is why I like to come up with these builds and show off these builds to keep the game fun, to keep it enjoyable. And for me, I really like the bow build. That was something where I just kind of kept going on fighting bosses because it was a little bit of a challenge and it kind of forced me to learn different things, keep my distance, and kind of learn a different style of play with a bow build. Now that Godric went down, after a little bit of time that did take with a bow, we're going to go over equipment, stats, everything that you need to know to set up a bow build and do the Discord challenge as well. Let's get into equipment. For equipment, we have the short bow plus 25 preferably. We had the great knife. We had the buckler shield as well. This was a full bandit setup. We had some of the bandit armor on as well. We had arrows reach talisman, arrows sting talisman, Dragoncrest great shield talisman, ritual swords talisman. Then you could use something like the faith and defense tier as well. Let's get into stats for this one. So for stats, I just want to mention real quick before we jump into this, as far as stats go for each bow, most of the bows in the game are going to scale with a D. The majority of them are going to end up being quality weapons, so you're going to go with strength and dexterity as much as you can. You're not going to get a great return from it, but you're going to get an increase for damage. That increase in damage is going to be something that's really helpful if you're using something like the black bow too, which has better base damage than the short bow that I was using. And the next video up here we have is the coated sword build, a build that I had a lot of fun with, a very underrated weapon and a powerful weapon for PvE and PvP. If you're looking for a really cool Ash of War, really cool unique Ash of War, then the one that you're going to want to go with is the coated sword. Now granted, Cypher Pata is pretty good too, and it has a really cool Ash of War as well. But I really like the sweep on the coated sword. I like the whole pure holy and faith vibe. Plus, if you want to, you can throw in incantations as well, since it only scales with faith. That's going to make your life a lot easier given the fact that you have one stat to invest in. I'm always a big fan of weapons that have that one stat investment, whereas like, you go with the scavenger curve swords, for example, and you can go on a cult and you only need really arcane in the base dex. This is one of those type weapons where you only need that faith stat. That's it. That's all you need is the faith stat. So if you're staying at meta levels, this is fantastic. You can throw in incantations and be a full faith build with it as well. Another advantage that you'll see on screen, that you'll notice on screen here, is that I'm wearing the Malformed Dragon set, and I'm not really worried about weight. I'm still able to get a solid medium roll because this weighs basically nothing. It's really only a little bit more weight than any seal that you're going to use other than the weightless seals, so it's going to be something that you can combine with really good armor sets, high posture, throw in incantations and whatnot. Even if you want to go with lower armor, you can run a light roll, and at a weight of only 2.5, it's very convenient. Be a big bonus. And the Ash of War, as you can see on screen here, this is new game +7 against this dragon that I think I've rarely fought in my videos. It does a good amount of damage too, a good amount of holy damage. So I took on mainly field bosses in that video. Not really great for the late game bosses, but again, you're open to using any incantations in the game, so you can use them to take on some of the more difficult or holy resistant bosses in the game. Now that that dragon is down, we can get into equipment for this build. And for equipment, we have the coated sword +10. We had a Warhawk's Talon with frost on it to add a little bit more damage. We had the Malformed Dragon set on. We had Chilling Mist, by the way, on the Warhawk's Talon. Shard of Alexander, Sacred Scorpion Charm, Ritual Swords Talisman, Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman. Then you can use something like the Holy Tier and Faith Tier or Defense Tier as well. Let's get into stats for this one. For stats, no surprise here, we have a heavy invested in faith. Faith is one of the most fun things you could do in the game. If you haven't done a faith build yet, now's the time to do a faith build. You will enjoy it so much. It's so much fun being able to utilize all the stuff that's faith-based in the game. Plus, it looks really cool too. And again, this weapon scales purely with faith, so you'll be open to use a whole bunch of different things. And speaking of faith, next up here, we have the Magma Blade build. So I know people hate farming for these, but they're always included in my videos because I really like the Ash of War on the Magma Blades, the Magma Shower, and then I like being able to do jump attacks with them as well. They scale off of faith mainly on the Ash of War. The weapons themselves, the physical portion is more strength. They're just a ton of fun to use. Something for me where they're almost always going to be in my videos that are fun or something you should try, because if you haven't tried the Magma Blades yet, now is the time. Go farm for them. It took me 4 hours to get 2. I know that's on the rough side, but once you have 2 of these, you do have them forever, and they're one of the coolest weapons, coolest faith-based weapons in Elden Ring. By the way, I didn't mention this yet, but if you're not subbed, definitely sub to this channel if you love overpowered PvE builds. If you want to keep Elden Ring interesting, we're going to be doing constant Elden Ring content. We're going to keep it cool during the summer, so to speak, and then we're going to be obviously doing DLC later this year. Like I said earlier in the video, I think it's going to be probably around November, and I can't wait for that. Let's get into equipment for this one. For equipment, we have 2 Magma Blades +10. Any seal will do. I had the Gravelstone seal because I was doing some lightning incantations. We have the Shard of Alexander, Fire Scorpion Charm. We have the Rotten Wing Sword Insignia. It'll build up on the Ash of War as well. Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman, and then the Fire Tier as well. And next up here is the one I did yesterday. I had to include this one. Darkmoon Greatsword and Blasphemous Blade combination Powerstance build. This is one where you're just going to enjoy this because of the fact that we're using 2 very overpowered weapons, but I was able to come up with good stats at 150 that made use of both Ashes of War, both unique Ashes of War. By the way, all of these will be in the description below. I'm going to timestamp them too. And this is something where you're using the Blasphemous Blade, you're using the Darkmoon Greatsword, you're going to get a lot of damage, and combining them together for the Powerstance jump attacks while also utilizing both Ashes of War. Obviously, we have the beam for the stance damage on the Darkmoon Greatsword and pure magic damage, and then we have the fire damage on the Blasphemous Blade and Taker's Flames. There's good reason these are good too. Obviously, with the Darkmoon Greatsword, we have that 30-something stance damage per beam on the Ash of War, the unique Ash of War, and it's very FP friendly as well, taking obviously only a little bit of FP, and then you can use the beams for a minute. And then on the Blasphemous Blade, we got that good amount of fire damage that can also heal you too with Taker's Flames. This is definitely something you got to try out. If you want to try out a Powerstance build, this is one where you have a lot of variety with this. You can cast some spells and whatnot too if you want to add that on as well. And after the Draconic Tree Sentinel went down there, we're going to go over stats, build, equipment, everything you need to know for this powerful Powerstance build in Elden Ring. Let's get into equipment for this one. For equipment, we have the Blasphemous Blade plus 10. We have the Darkmoon Greatsword, preferably plus 10 on that as well. Any seal will do. We had the Raptor's Black Feathers, Shard of Alexander, Ritual Swords Talisman. We had the Erdtree's Favorite plus 2 for the weight and a little bit of health bonus. And then the Claw Talisman. And then you can use the Magic Tier and Fire Tier to boost this even more. Let's get into stats for this powerful build. Stats you can see on screen here. We didn't go for a crazy amount of faith and intelligence. We went for 40 and 33, but given the fact that we're using Golden Vow and Hellish Brewery, we're able to get a lot of damage even without a crazy amount of stat investment at 150, making this a powerful Powerstance build. We can use both Ashes of War to crush bosses in Elden Ring. That's the 5 most fun builds that I've done lately. If you're looking to change it up, by the way, if you're sticking to one build, definitely try different builds, try out different things. If you're playing Elden Ring in the meantime anyway, give different builds a shot. You're going to have a ton of fun if you mix it up, change it up a little bit, and try something different. In the meantime, if you're not on the Discord, there's over 400 something people there, closing in on 500. That's a community you're definitely going to want to be a part of. And if you're not subbed to this channel, now's the time to sub to this channel. There's a ton of awesome overpowered builds on my channel, ton of variety there. Thanks for watching, everybody, and as always, I will catch you guys there.